Welcome to Grow. I'm Gage, and I am unfortunately sitting here with a new face. This is my dad, and we are going to be talking about today the Ben Johnson hiring, the official head coach of the Chicago Bears now. He's only probably the 27th or 28th head coach since I've been born. So
It's probably true.
you know, this won't be the first time that we've had way too big expectations and then are just let down. It's kind of like a continuous cycle that we as Bears fans get to live through.
Yeah, we go through this cycle of like high moments of being absolutely sure that this is the year that we will go, 17-0, won't lose a single game, go into the playoffs.
We might win the 5 game. We might go 18-0. We go undefeated in preseason, and then it's like,
just keep going.
yeah,
Keep going.
yeah, it's like draft a rookie quarterback, fire the head coach, draft a rookie quarterback, so.
Yeah, it's just the problem is really hope, because hope is the one thing that makes us as Bears fans so incredibly miserable, because every time we have the hope of Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, well, okay, whoa. I don't know if I
Justin
ever actually
Fields.
had hope in Trubisky. Listen, hey, we beat the Packers to end the year, though. We're starting strong here on the hope scale,
This is where as
This is
a
the
young
exact
guy,
reason.
this is as a young guy, you just
You
can't
should have
allow
raised me
yourself-
better. You should
You
have.
can't allow yourself to hope like that. But this is amazing. Ben Johnson as the head coach of the Chicago Bears, I think honestly is a phenomenal move. And when you think about the Chicago Bears in the process that they have gone through of hiring coaches over the years, like it seems like they constantly aren't getting the guy. Like there's always like big names on the head coaching candidate list when it comes up in the offseason, and you see all of those coaches going to other teams, and I feel like for the first time you see the Bears snag one of the top names.
Right.
And I guess that kind of happened with Nagy, because Nagy was kind of one of those maybe fringe names. But man, this year, other than Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel.
Well, and this time
Who would've been
around,
bigger?
we did snag a big head coaching candidate, but this time around, he was an offensive head coach.
Yeah. Which again, this is where it gets bad, because I literally feel like I'm living in a time loop, because this is what we said when we hired Matt Nagy. Like these exact words, we were like, it's a young guy from a team that is winning.
I'm getting PTSD.
That's exactly what it is. So
There's a lot to like about Ben Johnson, though,
Yeah.
which I think he has a lot of qualities that some of the other coaches don't offer, and one of my concerns, honestly, with him is that he's not been a head coach before anywhere.
Right.
Which, depending on how you look at it, it can really go either way. If you're hiring another coach like Vrabel, who's been a head coach, he had some really down years there with the Titans, but then also took them to the AFC Championship.
Right.
So there's two sides to that. So you could be getting a head coach where you don't really know what you're going to get, who's been a head coach before, or someone like Ben Johnson who could be a home run.
Right. Well, and you've seen the Bears do this, where they're going back and forth, where like they went from Lovie Smith, who, it's Lovie Smith. You look back on 10-7, you're like, how in the world, or 10-6, like how in the world did they fire him after that season? To John Fox, who were like, yes, he's got Super Bowl experience, but I think John Fox was literally retired before he actually started at the Bears, and then so we've kind of done this thing where we've gone back and forth between young guys, old guys, new guys, experienced guys.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's probably not a lot you can say about either of those, because you can see places in the NFL where it's worked out to have a young guy who's never had coaching experience, but you've also seen it fall apart on him.
Yeah.
We've experienced that with Matt Nagy. So the hope is just, will he have enough experience to be able to run the team? And that's something we won't know until he hits the field.
Well, and I liked what you said earlier about the Bears snagging like one of the top head coaching candidates, because it's true. Like when you look at like some of the coaches that we were interviewing, like I know some people are split on Ben Johnson, which is fine. I understand being slow to going all in, which is valid. But
a little bit of hesitation there.
the hesitation is fine. But I, as a Bears fan, would rather have Ben Johnson than Mike McCarthy.
Oh man, when they were starting to talk about Mike McCarthy and they were requesting an interview for him, I could not have been more happy the day that the
Cowboys.
yeah, the Cowboys refused.
Yeah.
Yes, I was like, thank you, Cowboys. And by the way, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy is not the guy. He's not the guy.
No, and so that's where I am right now, where I'm like, Ben Johnson, super creative guy.
Yeah.
Looking at the numbers here, the Lions had the second passing offense in the entire league and the number 2 rushing defense, or no, number 6 rushing defense based on yards, number 2 based on touchdowns. And you know, you can point to some different factors there. I mean, you got Gibbs in the backfield, Montgomery in the backfield,
Right.
St. Brown and Laporta are lethal. Jared Goff is kind of unknown right now, and so, you know, how Johnson develops Caleb Williams is another story.
Right.
But when you're looking at some of the places Johnson was looking at, he interviewed in not Oakland, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You know, and the Bears are a lot more of enticing of a job. However, I will say, you know, I'm not surprised that he took the job. You know,
Right.
It makes sense. It's money, a lot of factors playing, but I'm surprised like he didn't stay in Detroit. You know,
Yeah, that's a tough one. I gotta imagine just as a head coach, like, or as an offensive coordinator, like thinking about leaving a system that is working and things are going well. And I know that their season came to an end far too early. And I know as a Bears fan, it probably is weird hearing me say this, but I grew up in Detroit and seeing the Lions lose that game was brutal.
yeah,
And so it's almost like you wonder if they're not going to stay to try one more swing at it. But you also know, like, this is Ben Johnson's moment.
Yeah.
He could not be a hotter of a
Right.
offensive
Right.
coordinator candidate than he is right now. And sometimes you just have to take advantage of the moment. And when I'm looking at the numbers here, and we're looking at some of the statistics of Detroit's offense, they outscored their opponents this season by 222 points, which is more than any other team in the league.
Good gracious.
I mean, they were blowing out teams. And I'm like,
220 points in 17 games is like, I don't want to do the math to average that out.
right.
Like
It's-
when they are beating teams, they are beating teams.
Yes,
Like,
they're destroying teams.
Yeah.
But the question too is that Dan Campbell or is that Ben Johnson? It's
Right.
probably a combination of
Well,
both of those.
and their D coordinator, Aaron Glenn, obviously just got sliced up by the Commanders, but he looked pretty good. He was been a head coaching candidate, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, that kind of brings us to our next point, you know, like the Bears could have a great offense. They could score 400 points a game, but what does that look like if the defense just kind of rolls over? I mean, we literally, other than like Darrell Taylor, who is a free agent this year,
Right.
we don't have anyone other than Austin Booker, opposite of Montez Sweat.
Yeah.
You know, so there's little, and again, big Bears fan, love what we've got going. Javon Dexter, love it. Our secondary is supposed to be great, but numbers wise was not. And I feel like that's something we have to understand is, you know, is that locker room stuff, you know, is that
Right.
is that Eberflus losing the locker room?
Right.
Maybe, but you know, there still needs to be someone to be able to bring that all together.
Right.
In-
And I think, like, you know, one of the things they always say is, like, winning solves all those culture kind of problems. And the problem with the Bears is they could not win games. They couldn't finish them. And I do think when you're talking about coaching, that's a coaching problem. When a team cannot finish a game that is as close as the ones the Bears lost this season, you have to look at the coaching. And so if you can correct that part of it, where you're winning those close games instead of losing them, which the Bears have been doing over the last several seasons, then some of those problems that happened within the defense wouldn't be happening because,
Right.
you know, when you look at the defense, they held up for so much of the season, but at some point they just start to crumble when the offense is doing nothing to help them win the game. I mean, the Bears weren't allowing teams for a good maybe half of the season. They didn't let any team score them more than, I think it was like about 20 points on them.
Right.
And but then at some point, after losing and the Bears not being able to put up more than 20 points on the board,
Right.
the defense just kind of gave up. And I think Eberflus clearly lost the locker room at that point, and that's where you saw the defense just crumble.
Well, and I mean, you talk about offensive struggles, like, the Bears could not get anything going on offense. It was, I mean, with Shane Waldron,
it was a disaster.
It was really, really bad. Like, the Bears very much so had one of the worst offenses in the league. And when I'm looking at the Lions schedule right here, you have a lot of similar teams in common because that's just how the schedule's made. And you look at these teams, and the Lions were able to get stuff going.
Yep.
I mean, they beat the 49ers.
Yep.
They beat all these teams that the Bears played. And not to mention, the Bears were awful in conference. And the Lions got it done.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lions were 2-0 against the Vikings.
Right.
And were they 2-0 against the Packers too?
Yeah,
I think they were.
Yeah.
And then they were 2-0 against the Bears.
Yes.
So were they undefeated in conference?
I think they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they got 2 wins against the Vikings. Yep, they do. Yeah.
And that's another thing, honestly, with a great division like the NFC North, you've got to be able to beat some of these conference teams. And so 2-0 against, like, now again, offensive coordinator to head coach, it's a big jump. And we saw that with our interim,
Thomas Brown.
Yeah, Thomas Brown.
Yeah.
And obviously he was a passing game coordinator, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
But you did see where it was like, man, he looks great. And then he got moved to head coach, and it was kind of like, whoa, man, like it's worse. And so, I'm excited to see how Ben Johnson takes the jump. And I think he'll do great. He has experience winning. And like, he's just, the thing that gets me excited about Ben Johnson is like how creative he is, like with some of those play calls,
Oh, for sure. Like the one that he did against the Bears.
Yeah.
I mean, that play was crazy.
Yeah, that was
absolutely crazy.
So I feel like he brings that aspect to the Bears, and 2-0. We'll see if he's able to, because the Bears have a lot of pieces in place offensively to be able to, and that's probably what enticed him to take the job. But the Bears have a lot of pieces in place to go far, and that's why so many people expected them to go farther than they did this year. Now, how does that affect the O-line? Because that's the main problem right now. I don't know. You've got Odunze, Moore, Allen, Kmet, great tight end.
Oh, yeah.
You've got DeAndre Swift, who's supposed to be a great running back.
Well, and that's like a major question. I think kind of what you're saying right now leads into that next question, which is then, what does this mean, with considering all of that and considering what then next year looks like? What is it that we need the most for the draft? And I think you started to hit on it, which the most obvious thing is saying the offensive line. If Ryan Poles doesn't address the offensive line, like it's like criminal what he's done with the offensive line. Like, how in the world, as a offensive lineman, Ryan Poles was an offensive lineman, and how is the one thing that he has failed to do be not drafting and putting together an offensive line? Yeah. It's a Bears tradition at this point, really. It is. Everybody talks about the fact that we need an offensive line, but then nobody does anything about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest one. But beyond that, what do you think about, like, what else do we need? What are our highest draft needs beyond the entire offensive line?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a hard question because 2-0 against these to say everything,
But like you said, I mean,
let's start at the top. All right, we don't really need a kicker. We probably don't need a quarterback.
Right.
But if I'm actually answering your question there, I think the main answer, other than offensive line, is probably either D-line or safety. So Brisker is great, but Jonathan Owens had 2-0 against, not at the very least, he did not have a great season.
Yeah.
And so we need someone opposite Brisker. If Brisker was injured, if Brisker keeps having these injury problems, we're gonna have to have someone behind him.
Yep.
So safety, corners, it's not, they didn't play great, but it's fine.
Right.
And then edge rusher, interior D-line is fine, but
I would say edge rusher is probably one of the ones that stands out to me because you have Montez Sweat, who I think is a really great player, but he's one of those players that, like, he just doesn't have the support to draw any other attention away from him. And I don't know if we have the guys on our team right now. I don't think Booker could develop fast enough to be that guy. So I feel like what you're going to end up having to do is you're going to have to bring in somebody in off of free agency. Maybe it's somebody that's more towards the tail end of their career, and maybe you sign him for a single year contract where they've got another year or two, where they're not like an every snap kind of player, but they're like okay, it's third down and long,
like a Matthew Judon almost kind of player.
Yeah.
It's hard though because I'm looking at the Commanders NFC Championship right now, and I'm looking at their team, and they've done basically what the Bears need to do. You know, they've got a rookie quarterback, they've got a decent O-line, wide receiving core is great, their running backs are great.
Yeah.
But they brought in a couple key veterans like Bobby Wagner, like playing his tail off. Literally, I think PFF's highest grade linebacker. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's going crazy.
He had a great season, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that. He had an amazing season.
And you're kind of like, who? Bobby Wagner? What? Like,
Yeah.
He's still
I thought he
playing?
was done.
Right.
Like, I thought he was done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is where I agree with you on that. Is that's where the Bears need to go. Is in my opinion, the best way to fill the holes in the offensive line is through the draft. I mean, we traded a 4th rounder for, was it Coleman Shelton or Ryan? It was Brian Bates, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
4th rounder.
Yeah.
A 4th rounder. Like a 4th rounder. We don't have a 4th round pick this year because we traded.
And what do we have for it?
Nothing. A couple games lost. Like,
yes,
you could put 4 losses on that, you know, and
yeah.
And so I think the best way to do that is just going into the draft, because I've seen it, you know. When's the last time that the Bears picked up like an insane offensive lineman on free?
It's been a really long time.
I could not answer that question.
It's been a really, really long time. So let's do this, because when you start thinking about the draft, you also have to think about free agency, because that is also coming up. And the Bears actually have a pretty long list of, I think, over 30 players that are set to become free agents. So let me hit you with maybe the top 10 free agents, and I want you to just give me like
a thumbs up. I'll give you a thumbs up, and then
okay, all right. So let's start from the bottom. Okay, so you have Larry Borom, offensive lineman. Or is he let it go?
I'm gonna say keep. You know, Larry Borom has been awful, you know, to say the least. But it's, to me at this point, it's like, why get rid of him? You know, like, I don't see any other team trying to target him like really strongly.
So you're saying, like, get him on a team-friendly deal as a depth guy.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what he really was this year.
Right.
Okay, next up, Jack Sanborn, undrafted free agent from Chicago, linebacker.
I'm gonna go keep, because Jack Sanborn is a good rotational guy. You know, you can't always have your 2 linebackers in 24/7. Obviously, that depends on the defensive coverages and whatnot. But,
right.
Great rotational piece.
Yeah.
Hardworking dude.
Yeah.
I think you could get him for really cheap.
I think so too. I don't think there's
he's a fan favorite, you know, and so
yeah, there is some glow about him in the Chicago area, and he's had moments where he's really shined, and I don't think like he's going to end up being your starter, but as a depth piece, he's really great.
Yeah.
Patrick Scales, long snapper.
This is gonna be my 3rd keep in a row. I'm gonna say keep.
You gotta keep him. He's been around forever. He's the longest tenured Bears player on the team.
Yeah,
and he's been great. He got injured this year, which you remember the game where Cole Kmet had to do long snapping. I heard on his podcast he talked about having to snap in that game, and he was like he was talking about like how bad he was sweating and like stressing out before that. And yeah, I can't imagine like scoring the touchdown and then immediately going to long snap the extra point is crazy. Okay,
that's a great story. I need to picture that like on my wall or something.
Yeah. Okay. So next one, Mercedes Lewis, tight end.
Don't
give me a thumbs up on this. I thought this was easy.
I'll go down.
Yeah, I'm letting go of him. I don't think he did much in
yeah.
I don't know. It's not like I have his numbers in front of me or something like that. But the few times I hear his name, I feel like it's where it's like a missed block or it's a dropped pass or and I know he's not the pass catching tight end guy, but I also don't feel like he's been that important to our team.
Yep.
Okay. Travis Homer, running back. Yeah.
That is the easiest one on the list.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter, third stringer, behind Roshan.
Oh, yeah.
Did I say? What did I say?
Hunter.
Travis Hunter. I'll take Travis Hunter any day of the week.
Different player, slightly.
Homer. Nah, Homer is a third stringer. You could draft one of those 7th round.
He's hung around.
You cut that guy. That's money to spend on a no lineman.
Yes. Well, here's your really big question. Tevin Jenkins, offensive line. Do you resign? Tevin.
I'm gonna say.
Tevin.
I'm gonna say.
Tevin. Yeah.
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I'm really curious to see what they do about it because there's so much potential there, but the guy can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
He's had in his very short career with the Chicago Bears, I don't know how many games it is that he's missed, but he's missed games continually because of injuries in every single season. And honestly, I think it's had an impact on his ability to improve as a player. And so at some point, you just have to cut your losses and say, sorry, it didn't work out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you can't. If you can't rely on him, then I don't know how you can't have him as a starter.
Right.
And that's the real problem. I think that's really the problem is as a starter, he can't stay healthy, so you can't rely on him. And then you have a big issue later in the season, which has happened every year we've had him.
Yeah.
Next one is the one name that I don't even know that I can say it. It's Agbong Bamiga. Is that it? Nailed it.
Nice shot.
What do you think? Linebacker. Undrafted free agent.
Yeah, I wish I knew how much these players were getting paid, but I'm gonna say no. Linebacker, we're set. And if theoretically in this situation we've already re-signed Jack Zimborn, so
yeah. Okay. All right. Next is Coleman Shelton.
Tevin. Come on now. Don't play with me.
Like, how fast can you get him to clean out his locker? Like, just it didn't work. It didn't look good. He's not the guy.
Yeah. Nope.
Daryl Taylor, defensive end.
Tevin. Yes. I say you re-sign him. Yeah. They're not going to.
Yeah.
But if I was GM, I would get him on a very cheap deal and re-sign.
Okay.
Because, again, what's the point in not with some of those Tevin crusher holes that you need in your team?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said re-sign Borum.
Yeah.
I would re-sign Taylor.
Yeah. Perhaps certainly the most high-profile one of them all is Keenan Allen. Are you signing Tevin or are you letting him go? Tevin.
There is perhaps 2 words for why I'm about to make the decision the way I am.
Okay.
And his name is Tyler Scott.
Okay.
And so I'm going to re-sign Keenan Allen.
Okay.
And the reason is not because of his production. The reason is not because of his amazing haircut.
Tevin.
The reason is because
Tevin.
Who else? Who else? And I think I sometimes even get caught up in that because, with Ben Johnson, what will he be able to do with Kmet? Will Kmet truly be another receiver?
Right.
Which he's been really hot and cold.
Right.
And you've got Odunze and Moore, and then Kmet.
Yeah.
That could be solid. So maybe in that case, then with Johnson, you're just kind of what? No, we're good. But if you, I don't know what the market is. I don't know how much Allen is wanting, how much they could get Allen for a deal. But I'm thinking, man, if you can get him for relatively cheap, he's a vet still looking to go to a Super Bowl. I feel like a delusional Bears fan talking about the Super Bowl.
Way it's supposed to be.
But who else? Tyler Scott.
Yeah, I think to me the point here is this. I don't even think you really know what you have in Keenan Allen because the offense this year was such a disaster under Eberflus. we don't even know what we have in him. Like it's unfair, I think, to judge him based on this season. And I'll say he did not have a great season.
Right.
There were so many times where he had drops that I felt like he should have caught. But you're like, is it still him developing chemistry? Is it a terrible offensive strategy? I mean, I felt like our receivers were never open, and we've got great receivers on this team. And so to me, that then I'm like, that has to have something to do with the offensive coordinator.
Yep.
And so to me, I'm like, if he's willing to come back to the Bears, I think you sign him on another 1-year deal and see what he can do under a real offensive coordinator who knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So we need to wrap this up, Gage, but I want you to talk about the importance of this hiring working for the Chicago Bears. What are the implications?
Well, I think it's a step forward, which I think is where you got to start. You're going from Thomas Brown to Ben Johnson. The Bears are making moves. Like it's not like the owners and organization doesn't realize that something has to change. So they fired Eberflus they fired a head coach for the first time midseason.
First time, yeah.
But I think it means a lot of good things for the Bears. Historically, Chicago has always had a great defense. I'm not really worried about that. I'm excited to see who they hire as defensive coordinator. I heard that the former Saints head coach, Dennis Allen, was an option, which I wouldn't be too disappointed with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a great step forward because
Evan.
Historically speaking, the Bears have not been able to get some of these great, renounced head coaching candidates. So I'm proud of the Bears and the owners for being on it 2 days later, and getting him.
That's encouraging.
And so I think these are the steps where it's like, okay, so you drafted a quarterback number 1 overall. Okay, now you fired the head coach. Okay, now you're hiring Ben Johnson. I think it's a great step forward. The offense should look theoretically way better. And there's a lot to like with this Ben Johnson hiring.
I agree. And I think it absolutely has to work because you think about Caleb Williams, for the sake of Caleb Williams, this has to work. You have a potentially, I know everybody says it, generational quarterback, but that's really what he is.
And the contract window as well.
Yeah, you have such
all
a
these
small
contracts
contract.
are ticking now.
Yes.
The time is ticking on those contracts. So you've got generational quarterbacks. Contract is clock is ticking.
One of the interesting things is I feel like Ryan Poles has now bought himself time though, because he has however long Ben Johnson has on this team. I think Ryan Poles is riding with him, and so I think Ryan Poles has bought himself a few years of grace.
Yeah.
I think the one challenge is it's going to be hard as a Bears fan with Caleb Williams and all the weapons that we have currently, is to have any level of patience with this developing. And the truth is, as a brand new head coach, the truth is it's just going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And can the Bears weather that storm of allowing Ben Johnson to find his footing as a head coach? And
Only time will tell.
only time will tell. But it's been great, man. It's been great today seeing this signing.
Yep.
Again, as much as I try to suppress that hope and push it down,
It's really an exciting move.
I could not believe it when I got a text from a friend that they hired Ben Johnson,
Great.
and I was like, I can't believe it actually happened.
Yeah, it's
because I
awesome.
was like, I think we're gonna sign Mike McCarthy, and every time I see him on the sideline wearing Bears gear, I'm
Oh
gonna
my
throw up into a
gosh.
trash can.
Whoa.
But it's not happening.
It's
We've
not-
got Ben Johnson. We've got Ben Johnson.
It's like a dream come true.
It's a dream come true.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we could talk about this today. I think it's a great move. So only time will tell.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you did make it to the end, consider liking and subscribing.
Don't consider. Do it.
Okay.
Like
all
and
right, do it,
subscribe.
Do it. And we'll see you next time on Growl.